Right now your eyes are lying to you. Not occasionally, not under unusual conditions. Every single moment you're awake. And the most unsettling part? A philosopher figured this out 2,500 years ago. Before telescopes, before microscopes, before science as we know it. His name was Plato, and what he discovered about the nature of reality will permanently change how you see the world. Here's the question that broke him open. Why does a river change, but still remain a river? Think about that. The water from yesterday is gone. New water flows in its place. The banks shift over centuries. Nothing is the same, yet you look at it and say, that's a river. How do you know that? Plato watched rivers, flowers blooming, bodies aging, and he noticed something no one else had quite put into words. Everything in the physical world changes. Everything decays. Everything ends. But truth, real truth, cannot decay. If it changed, it wouldn't be truth anymore. It would just be opinion. So where does stable truth live, if not in this unstable world? That question became the most consequential in Western philosophy, and the answer Plato arrived at is stranger than most people realize. He called them the forms, not forms like a document you fill out. Forms as in the eternal blueprints behind everything that exists. In Plato's vision, there is a realm beyond space and time, invisible, unchanging, more real than anything you can touch, where perfect templates exist for every object, concept, and quality. There is a perfect form of horse, a perfect form of justice, a perfect form of circle, a perfect form of red, and every horse, every just act, every circle, every red thing you've ever seen, it's a copy, an imitation, an echo of the real thing. The world you experience is the shadow. The forms are what's casting it. Now, here's where it gets genuinely strange. Plato didn't think the forms were just useful ideas we invented. He thought they existed independently, on their own, whether or not any human mind ever thought of them. The form of triangle exists whether or not anyone has ever drawn one. The form of justice exists whether or not any society has ever practiced it. They aren't thoughts. They're the architecture of reality itself. And here's the question that should be sitting in your mind right now. How would we ever know? That's where the cave comes in. Plato asked you to imagine something. A group of people, chained in a cave since birth. They cannot turn their heads. They can only see the wall in front of them. Behind them, a fire burns. Between the fire and the prisoners, figures move. Objects, shapes, silhouettes, casting shadows on that wall. The prisoners have only ever seen shadows. So they think the shadows are reality. They give them names. They study them. They argue about them. They build their entire understanding of the world from flickering images on a wall. Now, one prisoner breaks free. He turns around. The firelight blinds him at first. It's overwhelming. But as his eyes adjust, he sees the objects casting the shadows. He realizes everything he believed was real was a projection. He stumbles toward the cave entrance. Sunlight hits him. He's blinded again. And slowly, painfully slowly, a new world comes into focus. The real world, trees, sky, the sun itself. And the sun, Plato said, represents the highest form of all, the form of the good, the source from which everything else gets its truth, its reality, its meaning. The cave isn't just a metaphor. Plato is saying, that's us, right now, watching shadows, calling them real. The question is, what's the fire in our version? What casts the shadows we mistake for reality? And the harder question, if someone escaped and came back to tell us, would we believe them? There's a detail in Plato's story most people skip over. When the escaped prisoner returns to the cave to free the others, they try to kill him. His eyes have adjusted to sunlight. Down here in the dark, he can't see as well as he used to. He stumbles, he seems confused. The other prisoners think the journey broke him. They decide it's safer to stay. Plato wrote this long before Galileo, before Darwin, before every thinker who returned from some unfamiliar truth and found the world wasn't ready for it. The pattern repeats. Now, here's something that changes everything about how you experience your own mind. Plato believed you have already seen the forms before you were born, Before this body, this life, this world, your soul existed in the realm of forms directly. You saw perfect justice, perfect beauty, perfect truth. Then you were born, and birth is the act of forgetting. Learning isn't acquiring new information. Learning is remembering what you already knew. He called it anamnesis, recollection. And this explains something that's always felt strange: why certain truths, when you encounter them, don't feel new. They feel familiar, like something you recognized rather than learned. That flash of sudden understanding, that feeling of, yes, of course, how did I not see this before? Plato would say, that's your soul remembering where it came from. The forms aren't just ancient philosophy. They show up everywhere in modern life. Consider mathematics. E equals mc squared. That equation doesn't describe one explosion or one atom. It describes a relationship, pure, abstract, universal. It was true before Einstein wrote it down. It will be true long after every star in the universe burns out. Where does that equation live? It's not in the ink on the page. It's not in the chalk on the board. It exists the way Plato said the forms exist, independently, invisibly, eternally. Every time a physicist searches for the unified theory of everything, the one equation that explains all forces, all matter, all energy, they're doing exactly what Plato described, ascending from appearances toward the form. He just didn't have the vocabulary we do. So how do you access the forms? Not with your senses. Your eyes deceive you constantly. A stick looks bent in water. Objects look smaller far away. The same color looks different depending on what's next to it. The senses report. They don't reveal. Reason is different. Reason can see past the shifting surface. It can grasp what stays the same across all instances, what's true in all cases, what couldn't be otherwise. That's why Plato was obsessed with mathematics, not because he was a mathematician, but because geometry showed that some truths are necessary. You can't make a triangle whose angles don't add to 180 degrees. You can't make a circle with unequal radii. These aren't rules humans invented. They're structures we discovered. Here's the part where Plato gets radical about beauty. He wrote an entire dialogue about love, and his conclusion was this: you don't fall in love with a person. You fall in love with the form of beauty, briefly visible through a person. When you see someone and you're struck, when beauty hits you like something outside yourself, what you're feeling is recognition. Your soul, catching a glimpse of something it once saw clearly, before the forgetting. And Plato traced a ladder. First, you're drawn to one beautiful person. Then, you recognize beauty in many people. Then, in ideas, in mathematics, in truth. And finally, if you follow the path all the way, you glimpse beauty itself. Not a beautiful thing. Beauty. The form. Love, properly understood, is the engine of awakening. The universe designed desire to point toward truth. Now here's the tension Plato never resolved, and it's worth sitting with. He distrusted art, almost banned poets from his ideal city. His reason? Art imitates appearances, which are already imitations of forms. So art is a copy of a copy, twice removed from truth, and yet he wrote in dialogues, with characters, drama, irony, beauty. He used myth to convey his deepest truths: the cave, the charioteer, the ladder of love. So which is it? Does art hide truth or reveal it? Plato's answer, buried in his own practice: both. Art that lures you deeper into surfaces, dangerous. Art that uses beauty to shatter surfaces. That's philosophy wearing a different mask. A melody that moves you towards something you can't name. That might be the form of harmony, echoing through sound. Let's come back to you. Right now, this moment, there's something happening in your awareness that doesn't change. Your thoughts are moving, emotions shifting, sensations rising and falling. But something is watching all of that. Something that stays the same while everything else moves. What is that? Plato would say, that's the soul. the part of you that belongs to the realm of forms, the part that was there before this body and will persist after. You cannot see it the way you see a chair. You cannot touch it, but it's undeniably here, structuring everything you experience the way a form structures every instance of itself. The cave doesn't imprison you against your will. That's the part people miss. We need the cave. If you perceived eternity constantly, if every moment you saw pure form, pure meaning, you couldn't function in ordinary time. You couldn't eat, work, talk, survive. The forgetting is part of the design. The descent into matter is how the soul builds strength. The cave trains what the sunlight reveals. Resentment of illusion misses the point. The shadows are the curriculum. The question isn't, how do I escape the cave? The question is, how do I remember the sun while I'm still in it? This is what Plato actually wanted. Not for you to become a hermit, not to abandon the world, but to live in it differently, with the awareness that every appearance points beyond itself. A door is not just wood and hinges, it's the idea of passage. A melody is not just sound, it's proportion, relationship, invisible structure made audible. Your daily life is saturated with forms. You're surrounded by divine architecture, like a fish, unaware of water. To glimpse what Plato saw is to realize living ideas, not dead things, compose the universe. Here's the question he leaves you with. When you encounter something genuinely true, not information but truth, you don't debate it. You recognize it. Something in you says, yes, before the argument forms, before you can explain why. That recognition, Plato's word for it, is anamnesis, remembering. The soul knows truth by resonance, not by logic. Logic confirms it afterward, which means the forms aren't somewhere far away. They're what that recognition is. The wall between matter and meaning isn't as solid as it looks. Close your eyes for a moment. Notice what stays constant while thoughts move through you. That stillness, that presence. It has no shape, no color, no location, but it's undeniably here. Is that not, in some sense, a form? The form of awareness itself? Plato never said the forms were easy to reach. He said the journey was like eyes burning in sudden brightness, disorienting, painful, necessary. But he also said this: the realm of forms is not beyond the stars. It's the luminous silence behind every thought, and it waits, right now, to be seen.